We have a quick optimistic, hopefully, charge from our dear friend Ruth Messenger, Upper West Sider, politician, activist.
Thank you. Good morning. Good afternoon. I'm going to start with a land acknowledgement, with thanks to the Lenape and Mannahatta peoples who stewarded the land and water that we are here to enjoy. And I have brief remarks and a couple of directives, but I want to pick up on some of the extraordinary panel and some of the questions. So I want to say yes to issues about the curriculum, but anybody who imagines that there are American schools that are teaching the story of land theft in America is dreaming. So we have a lot to do here. This is an incredible gathering. I know that because all week long people said to me, I'm going to see you there, or my daughter is going to see you there, or my mother is going to see you there. So I want to congratulate the organizers on pulling together lots of people who are interested in a thoughtful examination of who we are as Jews, who and what we care about, and how we are and how we should be playing our roles in the world. Esther was clear to me that I was not being asked to do a text-based drash or to discuss Gaza and the raft of issues in the Middle East that consume our attentions and our passions. Those are the primary focus of the gathering and of the panels. What she wanted me to do was to talk briefly about being an activist, about being a social change agent, someone whose work for justice is rooted in and is an expression of her Judaism. That seemed easy on the one hand, and then challenging on the other hand, because it's so obvious to me that it takes time to parse it out. So it is who I am and how I was raised, and I'm going to give you a bit of ancient history there, which I'm sharing for a reason. My parents, each officially from a Jewish home, set out to create a home different from the ones they grew up in, a home that was explicitly rooted in a Judaism as it spoke to them, in holiday observance, in values, and in acting on those values. Forget the synagogues and the denominations for a minute. I always say when people ask, well, what denomination are you? I say social justice. So that is how I was raised, with a grandfather who was the first executive director of Federation in New York, the first, a mother who went to work for the then chancellor of the Jewish Theological Seminary, whom I knew as Finky, who worked there for 55 years, and my mother, and regularly wrote about the teachings of Judaism in such diverse areas as the environment, domestic violence, and the role of women. But the important issue is that I learned their Jewish values, I learned their Jewish ethics, I learned the penchant of Jews always to have a disagreement and to debate it out at the dinner table. And I'm telling you this because, yes, the schools, but also in our homes. News is terrifying. If you think any of you, and I get to be the authority here because I have 3 children, 8 grandchildren, and 5 great-grandchildren. If you think that any young person today, including quite young, doesn't know what's going on, you're wrong. They hear it from you, they see it on television, and to the extent that it's not talked about, they internalize it, not at the level of trauma that these brilliant people were talking about, but with some trauma. There are these things you don't get to talk about. So please, talk about them. Tell them what you're doing. Find ways to connect them to their stories and to the fact that we live in a world full of tension and full of debate about who we are and what we need to do. It's the teaching of my family, and it's the teaching of our texts that informed my work in elected office and my work as the CEO of American Jewish World Service, an organization that describes itself as motivated by Jewish values, working to end poverty and expand human rights in the global South. It is the special sauce of American Jewish World Service, directly related to everything that's being discussed today, and we heard people quote this already, that we take our belief in B'Tselem Elohim seriously. We take it into the field. We let the brave people who are fighting for their land, or fighting for their children, or fighting for their sexual rights to be the people who set the agenda for how we can work with them and support them. And that is at least equally true and probably more so in looking at the issues of the Middle East. Who are the people who are there, some of whom have spoken? What do they see as the next steps? How do we incorporate what they want and what they believe in into what we come to work and stand for? And now I'm going to go a little bit afield. You know, when you invite somebody to speak, she gets to talk about whatever she wants. It is that teaching and my personal background that motivates me today to work with and for our newest New Yorkers, the several 100,000 people who have come to our city in the last 2.5 years. These are people who need our concrete services, who need the assistance of our government, of our governments, and who need our help. Not only because we, as you know, we are taught to care for the other and the stranger, but also because, tachlis, most pragmatically, they are a new labor force that is critical to the future economy of our city and our country. In my humble opinion, they need us as Jews and as Americans to stand against the current threats of deportation, against the actual arrests of people for exercising their First Amendment rights, even when we may not agree with what they say. Thank you. Please remember that if the government can arrest a Muslim woman on her way to an iftar in Boston to end her fast day and deport her to Louisiana with no due process, if they can round up Venezuelans and fly them out of the United States against a court order, if they can arrest Mahmoud Khalil and then promise, as the Secretary of State has done, that there will be many more, then, as Pastor Niemöller recognized, they can come for any of us. So whether you're focusing your issues on the extraordinary topic of this conference or you're there to help with immigrants, I want to say a little bit more. And that is what the rabbis taught, which is that study is more important than action because it leads to action. That similarly, and this is important to me, and not probably less true for people in this room, but very true for our synagogues and our schools and some of our community organizations, and very true as well in Gaza, that service or concrete aid is a critical commitment of our faith, but it is not sufficient. We have to move on any issue from service to advocacy if we want to help advance justice. And we need that right now with the issues that I've raised, but frankly, as David said, we need it right now to protect the future of our government. So, what do we do? I think you know the answers. Demonstrate, yes, and please in bigger numbers. There was some reference here. I did the math a few years ago when the Israelis in Tel Aviv, Haifa, and Jerusalem were coming out every Saturday on the Supreme Court issues. The math said that that was equivalent, or would be equivalent, to 19 million Americans taking to the streets. So you know how far away we are from standing up for our democracy in the way that they did in Israel. Educate. So that was already spoken to. Yes, our schools, but right now in our homes. So here's one small charge to everybody. Easier than peace in the Middle East. Find a photo or an icon from one of your ancestors who came to this country and put the photo or the icon on the Seder plate and explain why it's there and what it signifies for your family, how people got here, how they were helped, and why it is our obligation to work for the next generation of immigrants. So all of that work in your homes, talk about these issues. As yourselves, speak up and speak out. But also, and this was beautifully spoken to on the panel, we need leaders of moral courage. And when there is not a mensch, go be a mensch. When there are not enough leaders with moral courage, then that's you. You as parents, you as speakers, you as organizers. Someone asked for groups. Jill Jacobs is here. Trua's doing this all the time. You want to know how to... I'm asking you on these issues to determine what you believe in and then be the person who stands up and speaks out and leans in. I've been doing it for a long time. I'm still here. It's wonderful to have lots of company, but we need more. Thank you.